All right, it's Dr. Avent-Holt here. I'm going to talk to you in this video about social solidarity, a kind of key concept for Emile Durkheim. And really we're going to focus in on the kind of two big types of social solidarity that Durkheim talks about in his work, mechanical versus organic. Now I want you to frame this and think about it in the context of social facts. Remember, Durkheim is concerned with analyzing society through social facts. So we're not thinking about what individuals are thinking or feeling or doing as individuals, like personal psychologies, but we're going to be thinking about the kind of collective life of society. We're going to be thinking about those social facts that drive for Durkheim, and we'll see how they drive for Durkheim, different kinds of social solidarity. Now, for Durkheim, there are really two types of solidarity, and he talks about this explicitly, or most explicitly in his work, The Division of Labor in Society, where he distinguishes between what he calls mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity. Now, mechanical solidarity you really need to see as linked with pre-modern society. So mechanical solidarity is the form of solidarity that exists within these pre-modern societies. So think kind of hunter-gatherer societies. Whereas organic solidarity is what holds society together, the way that society is held together in the modern world. So this is how modern societies like ours are held together. Now, he does not have a very strong contrast or a clear way to distinguish between pre-modern and modern societies. He doesn't periodize this very well. But in his head, really, or in the way he talks about it, we're thinking about pre-modern early human societies in the hunter-gatherer world versus modern societies in our kind of industrial societies today. So let's walk through each of these different types of solidarity, and then we'll talk a little bit about why it is that organic solidarity emerges out of mechanical solidarity. So what does Durkheim mean when he talks about mechanical solidarity? Again, remember, we're talking about the form of solidarity in the pre-modern world. And what you should really understand, or when you think about mechanical solidarity, think about a society held together through what Durkheim terms the collective consciousness. In these kinds of societies, everyone is basically doing the same kinds of things. They have the same kind of lifestyle. They have the same, usually religious beliefs. There's very little of a division of labor. You get kind of rudimentary divisions of labor between men and women, for example, men being the hunters and women being the gatherers. But everyone is more or less engaged in the same set of tasks within that society. So they're all the same. They're doing the same things, engaged in the same kinds of things. And so what happens, Durkheim argues, is that those societies share in a collective consciousness. They all members of that society basically share in the same understanding of the world, the same understanding of themselves and their lives, and what they're supposed to do in their world. Same religious beliefs, same beliefs about society, about themselves, if they're thinking of that. All right, so they're held together by a shared kind of consciousness. And so what happens is that solidarity, those societies have solidarity, and they're bound together through their similarities. These are very homogeneous kinds of societies, and again, critical for Durkheim, with very little of a division of labor, which means everyone is engaged in the same kind of daily, weekly routines. They're all doing the same thing together in the same kinds of ways. All right, so that's mechanical solidarity. Again, think of it as operating through the collective consciousness, where solidarity emerges out of our similarities. Now, what then is organic solidarity? Again, these are in modern. Organic solidarity is found in modern societies, and really, society is held together through what he terms functional interdependence. In these societies, no longer do we see people sharing in the same lifestyle. No longer do we see them sharing in the same belief systems, the same religious views and religious beliefs. These are very individualistic societies. And importantly for Durkheim, people aren't doing the same things all day, every day as their neighbors. People have very different occupations, very specialized occupations where they're doing very different things. So you have a neighbor who is, let's say, a computer programmer who's living next door to someone who is a college professor, who is living next to someone who is a surgeon, who is living next to someone who is a mechanic, right? So in these ways, everyone's got their own kind of special part to play in creating the whole of society. And so these are very individualistic societies. Again, people have their own personal worldviews, their own personal belief systems that may be very different from their neighbor. And they're doing very specific and different things from those who are around them to make up the whole of society, to create this whole division of labor in which society can then function or can then operate. And so in this way, what's really important to see is that solidarity actually emerges out of our differences. And this was a particularly important question for Durkheim. In this book, he's trying to really grapple with how is it that a society can be held together when you have people coming from such different walks of life, coming from such different places, different belief systems and moral systems. How is it that society can function in the midst of what he was witnessing in his own time as a rise of individualism, where the individual is seen as the thing that we prioritize? How can society then even be held together? And he argues that this can happen through the functional interdependence that emerges out of a complex division of labor. So counterintuitively, almost, solidarity emerges through our differences. Now, one lingering question is, well, why does this happen? Why does society move from mechanically based forms of solidarity to organic solidarity? Why does this even happen? Why do we get essentially this division of labor? And there's two basic things that kind of form a whole that you'll see in a minute that Durkheim argues are particularly important for why this happens. Number one is population growth. With the Industrial Revolution, we see things like birth rates going up as infant mortality goes down. So fewer, and basically think of this as fewer and fewer babies die. More and more of them are carried to term, and more of them are viable after the early years of life, which are more fragile. We get better sanitation, better nutrition, which means people are going to be living longer. So you basically just have what he calls greater social volume. That is a population growth. There are more people alive in your communities. And then the other he talks about is population density. So you have more people in the world, so to speak, and they begin to interact in more and more ways with one another. In one sense, we develop these urban centers that are organized around things like factories inside of particular towns and urban centers. So you have more people no longer dispersed across farmland inside of rural areas, but now they're congregated or consolidated into these urban centers, into a smaller and smaller space where they're more likely to interact with one another. So think of this as people coming from the towns, coming from the countryside, who again have different beliefs, different worldviews, different religious beliefs and understandings, all coming together and saying, hey, look, we're all very different. And so how is it that solidarity can emerge out of this sort of lots of social interaction with people from these different walks of life? And also, he argues communication expands across these places. So we're able to understand more and more as people begin to be able to travel from place to place, that there are these different worlds out there, these different social worlds out there, and can communicate across them. And this becomes even more complex after Durkheim's own life, when we get things like the internet, which can link people in this globalized way. Ultimately, he argues this creates what he terms dynamic density, lots of social interaction amongst lots of people across these large tracts of land, more or less. And so it's because of this that the collective consciousness recedes in life, right? The collective thing that was holding people together, our similarities move to the background, and the division of labor itself expands and becomes more complex, and our differences become the thing then that, according to Durkheim, holds society together. So make sure you understand the difference between mechanical and organic solidarity, and understand these processes, these social processes that produce organic solidarity. These are the social facts, as Durkheim talks about them, that produce organic solidarity in modern life. All right, let me know what kind of questions you have. Thanks so much.